After the morning criticism meeting, Adam Johnson used his influence in the afternoon to have me reinstated as a primary school teacher. In truth, the team had only intended to give me a warning. They didn't actually want to reassign me. After all, I was the only teacher in the school responsible for educating dozens of children. Adam and I walked out of the team's shabby office together. After a whole day of being pushed around, I felt drained and wanted nothing more than to return to my place and rest. Just as I turned to leave, Adam grabbed my arm. "Claire, don't you have anything to say?" he asked. I narrowed my eyes at him, my expression sharp and cold. "Shouldn't you be the one saying something?" My tone was pointed, a stark contrast to my usual demeanor. He hesitated, clearly unprepared for my abrupt change. In the past, I had always been gentle and considerate, putting him first in everything. In my previous life, I discovered that the city transfer quota I had worked so hard to earn was taken by Adam and given to someone else. I wrote him an angry letter and confronted him, but all he did was submit a marriage application to the organization, promising to marry me as soon as I returned to the city. Seeing the bright red approval stamp on the application, my resentment evaporated. I forgave him, dismissed his wrongdoing, and obediently stayed in the countryside for 3 more years. But things are different in this life. I won't forgive him so easily. Adam looked at me, his gaze scanning my face repeatedly, his confusion evident. "Are you angry?" he asked cautiously. I frowned and gave him a deliberate once-over, scrutinizing him as if he were a stranger. My calm but critical gaze made him visibly uneasy. "So, he does know how to feel guilty," I thought. A cold laugh escaped my lips. "Angry? Of course. I'm angry. That city quota. I earned it through my own hard work. What right did you have to give it to someone else? What did they offer you in exchange?" His face turned pale, and he stumbled back a step, visibly shaken. I seized the moment to press further. "If you want to look out for your own interests, fine. But don't you dare use me as your stepping stone. That quota was mine. The organization gave it to me. What makes you think you can trade away something that belongs to me?" Adam's complexion grew even paler, and his expression was one of panic. "It's not like that. Claire, listen to me," he stammered. "It was Mike who begged me for help. He said his girlfriend was sick and needed to return to the city for treatment, but they didn't have a chance. And since Sarah was in the same commune as you, I made the decision to give the quota to her. I know this hurt you, but as soon as you return to the city, we'll get married. Okay? Isn't that enough?" He looked at me with pleading eyes, his tone unusually gentle. Despite the mutual affection and the engagement arranged by our families, it was rare for him to lower himself like this. After all, he came from a well-off family and had always carried himself with pride. "Enough." I yanked my arm free from his grip. "You say Sarah is Mike's girlfriend. Who can prove that? And who can prove there's nothing improper between you and her?" My words struck him like a bolt of lightning. He stood there stunned, too shocked to respond. "I won't let this go," I said coldly. "I'll report this to the organization." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away. Of course, I knew Adam's capabilities. The matter of the city quota was already irreversible, and my words were just a bluff to unsettle him. I had other plans in mind. I was determined to seek justice for myself. My parents were still waiting for me back home. In my previous life, my grandmother passed away a year after this incident, and I hadn't made it back in time to see her one last time. She had raised me herself and was closer to me than even my parents. During those moments of grief, I had foolishly longed for Adam's comfort, writing him letters and hoping he would come to console me. But his response came much later, simply saying he was too busy to visit and urging me to take care of myself. Depending on others to save you is inherently foolish. And I had done plenty of foolish things in my past life. It took me 3 years to return home in that lifetime. By then, the college entrance exams had already been reinstated twice. Without good study materials in the countryside, I had planned to put in extra effort once I got back to the city. But the third exam was much harder than the first 2, and I failed in my haste. Around that time, Adam's family sent someone to propose marriage. Both families readily agreed, and I married him. I had originally planned to study for another year and try again, But Adam's mother fell ill and needed someone to care for her. I had to juggle my studies while also taking care of her. My father had once saved Adam's father during a flood rescue operation, and the bond between our families ran deep. Adam's mother had even taken me to stay with their family for a few months. At the time, she was kind and warm. However, once she realized that Adam had feelings for me, she sent me back home in an extremely dignified manner. She spoke to my parents, saying it was a good thing that the two of us cared for each other. But Adam was about to take his college entrance exams, and I was also at the right age for schooling. She suggested that we get engaged first. But later, when we became mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, the inherent tensions between us emerged. She began to scrutinize me, finding fault in everything I did, even when I tried my best to take care of her. Despite the fact that their family had hired professional caregivers, she was still dissatisfied and often spoke poorly of me in front of Adam. Under the pressure, I had to devote even more energy to her, and as a result, I missed my second chance at the college entrance exam. I still wanted to try for a third time, but that year, I became pregnant, with my due date falling the same month as the exam. After enduring repeated hardships in life, I finally gave up on my education and resigned myself to a path of no return. After giving birth to my first child, I soon had a second. The relationship between my mother-in-law and me deteriorated into utter chaos, and my once loving relationship with Adam slowly eroded. By the time I failed my second college attempt, Sarah had already graduated from university. Mike had gone abroad for further studies, and before leaving, he entrusted Sarah to Adam's care. At that point, Sarah had already achieved great success, becoming a university professor, a job many envied. Adam, too, continued to rise steadily in his career. The longer Mike was away, the closer Adam and Sarah became. They discussed politics, economics, interpersonal relationships, and social dynamics. They listened to songs from Hong Kong and Taiwan, attended plays and movies together, and even learned ballroom dancing. Their progress was mutual, and eventually, they reached the pinnacle of their success. Meanwhile, I was weighed down by family responsibilities, slowly boiling like a frog in warm water until I became indifferent to everything. Things only escalated when Mike returned from abroad and discovered that the money he had been sending to Sarah had all been lost in stock market investments. He was furious and beat Sarah severely. Adam tried to mediate, but it ended in a physical fight between the two. Mike spat out a mouthful of blood and, with a look of utter contempt, sneered at Adam, saying, "You can't trust a friend's wife. Adam, you've outdone yourself. Truly, you know a man's face but not his heart." After that, Mike and Sarah broke up completely. Even though Sarah no longer had a reason to meet Mike, she and Adam continued to stay in touch. Mike, unable to accept this, spread rumors everywhere, calling them shameless and accusing them of being a disgraceful pair. He even went to Sarah's home, causing a scene and demanding his money back. Later, without my knowledge, Adam used our family's savings to pay Mike back on Sarah's behalf. That wasn't a small amount of money. Most of it was mine. Though Adam had a high salary, the amount Mike had earned abroad was astronomical by the standards of the time. There was no comparison. At the time, I was working as a factory laborer. Coincidentally, the glass factory I worked at went public, and I received internal employee shares. I made a decent profit from them, but that money was taken by Adam to help Sarah. It wasn't until my mother fell seriously ill and needed money for treatment that I discovered our savings were completely depleted. Unable to afford treatment in Beijing, my mother passed away shortly afterward. My younger brother, desperate to raise money for her medical expenses, resorted to illegal activities and was prosecuted. My father, devastated by these events, suffered a stroke, leaving him paralyzed and unable to speak. I wandered the streets in a daze, directionless and utterly lost, until I collapsed on the sidewalk. When I regained consciousness, I found myself 10 years in the past. In my previous life, I made one mistake after another. I had experienced deep regret and self-reproach, even resentment for having married Adam. But now, I know that the future holds brighter days for my country, and for me. Will take action. This time, I no longer crave the things I once missed out on. I have better plans now. Even attending college is nothing more than a stepping stone for me. Adam caught up to me again, grabbing my arm. If you're angry, let it all out. You can hit me like you did last night if that helps. I stared at him coldly, the hatred slipping through despite myself. His pupils widened in shock as he looked at me, disbelief etched on his face. Claire, I didn't know you'd be this upset. If I had, I wouldn't have agreed to Mike's request. I tilted my head and gritted my teeth. I don't care about Mike or Sarah or anyone else. You'll fix this now and get me back to where I was. Adam lowered his head in defeat. I've already interfered with one personnel adjustment. I can't do it again. I had anticipated this response. It wasn't that he couldn't. It was that he wasn't willing to bear the cost. He had already overreached. And doing so again would attract criticism from the organization and jeopardize his career. He couldn't meet my scornful gaze and covered his eyes with his hand. When he looked at me again, his eyes were filled with sorrow. I promise you, I'll find another way, he said softly. I shook off his hand and gave him one last cold glance before resolutely turning and walking away, as if letting me hit him a few times would make everything go away. It wasn't that simple. Last night, Adam had come to find me. It was already late by the time he arrived. We had finished dinner, and the team had hosted him as a courtesy. He understood the significance of the gesture, so he stayed longer than usual. By the time he came looking for me, I was already in bed. He knocked on my door. Bang, bang, bang. The sound echoed in the dark, unnervingly loud, fearing it would disturb others. I got up reluctantly. There was no electricity in the village, so I lit a candle by moonlight. The shadows on the wall stretched grotesquely, making them look like monsters. The night air was cold, and I threw on my clothes haphazardly, muttering curses under my breath. When I opened the door, Adam was waiting outside, his handsome face starkly illuminated against the desolate, dilapidated backdrop of the village. His presence, refined and striking, seemed out of place. Seeing him brought a surge of anger. I didn't care if the neighbors overheard as I unleashed my fury. Knock, knock, knock. What the hell is wrong with you? Did someone in your family die? Adam stumbled back a few steps, visibly startled, his earlier confidence completely drained. Swallowing his retort, he cautiously pulled me aside, whispering, "Don't let others hear. It'll look bad." He led me to the shadow of an old locust tree, where even the moonlight couldn't reach. His tone softened as he spoke. "Your family wrote to say you're upset. Why didn't you tell me about it?" I rolled my eyes, recalling the scenes from my past life. Would I really write to him again in this life, only to wait for him to submit another marriage application? My plans and whereabouts were naturally something I had to explain to my family. But Adam? He wasn't worth the effort. "You," I replied icily. "I wouldn't dare aim so high. I don't need your charity, and I certainly don't want your harm. Consider our engagement null and void." I saw a flicker of shock in his eyes, followed by what seemed like the glint of tears. "Don't say things you don't mean," he pleaded. "I thought being a primary school teacher here would be better for you than Sarah's situation, so I agreed to help Mike." "Don't spout nonsense," I snapped, cutting him off angrily. "Help whoever you want. I don't care. But you had no right to take what was mine and give it away. Even if we were married, what's mine is still mine. You've got some nerve." Even in the dim light, I could see his face tighten at my words. I could see how utterly embarrassed he was. I continued, "I know exactly what kind of person Sarah is. Far better than you do. We're all from the city. First, none of us could handle the labor here, but we stuck it out. She, on the other hand, is always complaining and playing sick every few days. You might be blind to it, but everyone else sees her for who she really is. The organization left her here for a reason, and you're just as foolish. A good-looking face is wasted on you." His chest heaved with anger, but he managed to calm himself after a while. Cautiously, he said, "If you're really upset, just hit me. Take it out on me." I laughed. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. Without hesitation, I raised my hand and slapped him several times. His expression was one of pure shock as I turned and walked away. His suggestion was absurd. If I hit him bare-handed, others might think I was being playful, indulging in some couple's spat. But if I truly hit him with force or used a tool, I could cause real harm. and his hypocritical, manipulative mother would never let me off. Still, I didn't mind. In situations where the power dynamics are unequal, slapping someone's face is the most satisfying. They say you shouldn't hit someone's face. But this was just the beginning. I had a bigger plan in store, and I was ready to serve the main course. When Adam was about to leave, he asked to see me. At the time, I was teaching in the classroom. Through the window, I saw his flustered figure outside. I put down the book and went out to meet him, catching him by surprise. His face lit up with a hint of joy. I spoke directly. "Do you have any money on you? I lost my paycheck this month and can't find it anywhere." Without hesitation, he pulled out all the cash he had and handed it to me. I noticed a leather belt in his luggage and casually grabbed it as well. He froze, seemingly thinking I was no longer angry. "It's not much, but I'll send you more when I get back." Seeing that I neither argued nor lashed out, he pressed further. "I've been saving up quite a bit. I plan to give it to you when we got married. But if you're short on money, I can hand it over now." I cast him a cold glance, turned, and walked away. In my heart, I felt nothing but disdain for this man. In this life, I hadn't written to him, crying and complaining. Instead, I had written to my family. My parents must have approached his family, which is why he had come running. The pressure from his family and society had knocked him off his high horse. He could no longer dismiss me with a mere marriage application. Living this life again, I understood something clearly. A wife's position is something she secures for herself. My previous life had taught me that the main reason I was so disregarded was that I hadn't been ruthless enough. In my past life, I watched a TV series called Yearning. There was a character named Lu Huifang who reminded me of myself. Gentle, accommodating, and always sacrificing her own needs to help others. It suddenly struck me how meaningless that kind of life was. This time, I would boldly pursue what I wanted, even if it meant being labeled a shrew. I wouldn't care. Of course, I hadn't really lost my paycheck. The reason I asked Adam for money was that I needed to make a trip back to the city. Someone had to pay for my travel expenses. I went to the team leader, asked for leave, and explained that my father was ill and I needed to visit him. I handed him the leather belt as a gift, which he nervously accepted before granting me an extended leave. I returned to Harbor City without anyone knowing. Once home, I reunited with my family and spent some quality time with them. Then, using my left hand to disguise my handwriting, I wrote a detailed report outlining how my city transfer quota had been taken away from me. I made sure to include every detail. Finally, I approached Adam's biggest career rival and handed over the report. As someone who had lived this life once before, I knew exactly how to play my cards. I knew everything about Adam Johnson's situation, including where he lived. The night I approached his rival, I deliberately pulled my scarf higher to obscure my face. All I said was, "See for yourself if this is real or not. Decide how you want to use it. The person involved will cooperate." With that, I turned and walked away, giving him no chance to dig deeper. This matter was already clear-cut. It simply needed someone to act on it. Before I even returned to the countryside, word reached me that chaos had erupted on Adam's side. His secret manipulation of the city transfer quota had been fully exposed. The organization held a public meeting to discuss his actions, and Adam was forced to make a formal self-criticism. I heard it was the first major setback of his life. Standing on stage with his speech in hand, his hands trembled visibly. His once spotless reputation was now tarnished, making him the target of ridicule among his rivals. Meanwhile, I quietly returned to the village to await further notice. A work group from the city came to investigate, verifying the details of how my quota had been taken. Both the commune and the local team spoke on my behalf, and I finally regained my place in the city. I had altered my fate and, for the first time, taken a step in the right direction. It was only after I returned to the city that I learned Sarah had taken advantage of this opportunity to get a health checkup. It turned out she truly had some medical issues, which allowed her to stay in the city. Fate seemed to move like a set of gears, each piece turning as designed, though some differences remained. For example, my earlier return meant the job at the cardboard factory went to me, leaving my brother temporarily without work. I planned to wait a few months for the announcement of the restored college entrance exams, then buy study materials and prepare. The work at the factory was light, and I could study while working. For my brother, I intended to formally break off my engagement with the Johnson family and ask Adam's father to help arrange a job for him in return for my earlier support. That was the plan. But things took an unexpected turn. The workshop supervisor at the cardboard factory started bringing me meals. His family seemed to have connections at the supply cooperative, allowing him access to premium pork belly. He would carefully pack it into a lunchbox, steam it in the cafeteria's large steamer, and happily hand it to me. After several instances, it became clear to both me and those around us what his intentions were. In that era, such gestures often meant an impending marriage. But I had my own path to follow and couldn't entangle myself with him. Just as I was trying to navigate this situation, Adam's family came to formally propose marriage again. I thought long and hard before finally agreeing to marry Adam Johnson. At least it was an environment I was familiar with, and I had the advantage of knowing what was to come. I could control my fate. My earlier success in reclaiming my city quota was proof enough that I didn't need to fear him or avoid him. This decision also meant my brother could smoothly follow his path, just as he had in the previous life. The cardboard factory would later undergo privatization, and my brother would become a private business owner. If it weren't for our mother's medical expenses, he would have had an even brighter future. The wedding date was set for 3 months later. During that time, Adam tried to visit me several times, but I deliberately avoided him. Eventually, he showed up late at night and cornered me at home. With my parents present, we met in my room. He was as handsome as ever, though the confident arrogance he once exuded had dimmed somewhat. It was clear he had endured significant hardship recently. His face carried a trace of grievance as he handed me an envelope. Inside was around $1,000. I refused to accept it, pushing it back at him, but he maintained his stance, insisting I take it. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he kept his head slightly lowered, avoiding my gaze. "I know you're still upset," he said quietly. "I know I was wrong. I promised last time that I'd give you my savings. This time, I specifically brought it to you," Adam said, handing me the envelope. "I withdrew it from the bank. You can deposit it into your own account." His words stirred something within me. In my previous life, my mother had developed an occupational illness from working in the factory. She hadn't been mindful of self-protection, and her condition worsened over time. This time, I thought, I could use this money for her benefit. With the reforms from the new policies, labor insurance or even a small business might just be the perfect solution. I squinted slightly, a faint, inscrutable smile playing on my lips. "You're true to your word, Adam. That's good. It somewhat redeems your character," I said lightly. I praised him deliberately, lifting him up just enough so he couldn't step down from the pedestal of being the good guy. That way, he'd be more inclined to agree to my next request. I neither accepted nor rejected the money but instead shifted the conversation. "So, is this just a one-time gesture? Or are you planning to hand over your salary to me from now on?" He froze, staring at me in disbelief. The spoiled young master, who had never wanted for anything, seemed unable to grasp what I was implying. I clarified, "If you're truly sincere, then from now on, you'll give me your paycheck, and I'll give you an allowance. We'll live properly as a couple. If you're not sincere, then take this money back. I don't need it." Realizing what I meant, he quickly stammered, "Of course, I'll give you my salary from now on." I replied nonchalantly. Among the women known as strong wives in the village, who didn't have an iron grip on their household finances. With this, let's see how Sarah would dare take advantage of me again. I had a score to settle with her. Adam must have thought this move would please me, and he let out a sigh of relief. The wedding at the Johnson family was extravagant. While most families held receptions at home, his family chose the Bright Star restaurant. The guest list was extensive. Almost all their relatives and friends attended. I carried myself with grace and composure, to the point where even Adam's mother regarded me with a newfound respect. However, subconsciously, I kept searching for someone amidst the crowd. What an ironic twist of fate it was when I saw him, as Adam and I made our rounds to toast the guests. He offered cigarettes and drinks to the men while I handed out candy to the women. When we reached Mike's table, he stood up with Sarah by his side. Mike spoke first, his voice filled with guilt. I'm sorry, brother. I caused you trouble. It's nothing. Adam replied generously, patting him on the shoulder. Mike then turned to me, his expression more nervous. My face turned cold, my earlier smile disappearing entirely. This made Mike even more uneasy as he hurriedly said, I'm sorry, sister-in-law. I didn't think things would escalate like this. If I had known, I wouldn't have done it. Not even if you'd beaten me to death. Adam looked at me expectantly, hoping I'd offer some forgiving words. But I was waiting for someone else. Sarah, true to her demeanor in my past life, stood there delicately, as if she might collapse at any moment. Her graceful and fragile aura, resembling a poetic figure from a painting, drew attention. She carried herself with an air of pity, her movements light and ethereal, reminiscent of a tragic heroine. When my gaze swept over her, it was like an icy dagger piercing her. I couldn't forget how, in my previous life, Adam had taken all our family savings to pay off her debts. When I had gone to her for help, explaining that my mother desperately needed the money to save her life, Sarah had simply looked at me with indifference, her attitude dismissive. She didn't say a word, only stared at me as if I were insignificant, as though mocking me to take it up with Adam. Her friend, standing beside her, had spoken for her, sneering, No money for you. What do you want? Her life instead. As I stumbled away, my heart heavy with despair, I overheard Sarah whisper to her friend, loud enough for me to hear. The saddest thing for a woman is losing control of her own husband. A true snake in the grass. A beauty with a venomous heart. Today, facing her again, I had no intention of letting her off so easily. I fixed my gaze on Sarah, cold and unreadable. Her lips were already pressed together tightly, her expression heavy with tension. She glanced nervously between Mike and Adam, unsure of where to land her gaze. Adam tugged lightly on my sleeve, signaling for me to ease up and not escalate the situation. What are you pulling my sleeve for? I asked loudly, my voice cutting through the noise around us. The lively chatter of the guests fell noticeably quieter as people turned their attention toward us. Adam, ever the cautious one, leaned in to murmur, Let's handle this at home, away from everyone. What did you say? I demanded, deliberately raising my voice even louder. Adam froze, unable to respond, his usual composure faltering under the scrutiny of the crowd. I remained where I was, refusing to move to the next table. My gaze shifted back to Sarah, piercing her with an icy glare. Mike, sensing the tension, stepped in to mediate. Sarah, thank your sister-in-law, he said, trying to lighten the mood. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't be living so comfortably now. Or maybe an apology would be more appropriate. My voice was sharp, like ice cracking, as I added, Yes, an apology seems fitting. Sarah, predictably, began to put on her signature performance. Her eyes turned red, glistening with unshed tears. As she looked at me with an expression of pitiable helplessness, the tears hovered on the brink of falling. But I had no patience for her theatrics. With a loud, resounding slap, I struck her face. The sound was crisp, cutting through the silence. This time, her tears fell freely. I raised my voice further, crying at my wedding. What are you trying to do? Curse my family. The surrounding area grew even quieter as all eyes turned toward us. Guests further away, unsure of what had happened, stood up to get a better look. Adam's mother hurried over, her face filled with concern. What's going on here? She asked uneasily. Adam, eager to downplay the situation, quickly intervened. It's nothing, Mom. Just a small misunderstanding, he said, trying to pull me away by force. I yanked my arm out of his grasp, raising it high to make my point. Then, pointing at Mike and Sarah, I turned to Adam's mother and said hoarsely, No, Mom, this woman here is Sarah. The moment she showed up, she started crying, cursing our family. I'm sure of it. If I didn't slap her, should I have let her stay the night instead? Adam's mother paused, taking a moment to process what I'd said. She turned to Mike and said calmly, Mike, it seems your girlfriend was crying just now. Mike, caught completely off guard, stood frozen, unable to come up with an explanation. Adam, too, was at a loss for words. He certainly couldn't admit. Mom. Sarah wasn't crying until my wife slapped her. Adam's mother sighed helplessly and said, "Well, in that case, Mike, I'm sorry, but you'll need to take your girlfriend and leave for today. I'll come by your house another day to apologize properly." No. It's our fault," Mike stammered, his voice trembling. "We'll leave right away." I watched their retreating figures, my gaze never wavering. Just before they stepped out, Sarah turned back to look at me, her eyes filled with venom. In response, I gave her a cold, contemptuous smile, dripping with mockery and disdain. With the task accomplished and the drama subsided, I resumed accompanying Adam as we went table to table offering toasts. The main performance was over, and I felt a strange sense of detachment, the wedding banquet now seeming dull and uninteresting. For a long time after that day, both Mike and Sarah would find it hard to hold their heads up in our social circle. Their reputations were left tarnished, neither completely ruined nor entirely intact, but enough to make them the subject of whispers. As exhaustion settled in, I began to feel how monotonous the wedding festivities had become. That's when Fanny approached me, mentioning her requires some explanation. Fanny had played a significant role in my earlier life. When Adam's mother fell ill, the family initially hired a retired nurse as her caregiver. The nurse was competent and efficient, leaving little for me to do. However, Adam's mother's family later wrote to request that she take care of one of their own instead. The nurse was dismissed, and in her place came Fanny, a relative who had no experience in caregiving. Fanny was cunning, using her lack of knowledge as an excuse to avoid work whenever possible. She'd often say, "I don't know how to do this, but Claire learned so much from the nurse. She can handle it." When it came to undermining me and siding with Adam's mother, Fanny fully embraced her role as a loyal enforcer. I had initially planned to deal with Adam Johnson after the wedding, but I couldn't hold back today. I was in too good of a mood. No day was better than the present. Fanny sidled up to me and lowered her voice. "Your mother-in-law wants me to tell you to apologize to Mike's father later when you offer him a toast. We shouldn't be so harsh, even if we're in the right." That moment, I was standing with one hand on the table and the other holding a bowl of candy. As Fanny spoke, she draped her arm casually over my shoulder. Taking advantage of the situation, I pretended to be pushed by her, staggering backward and collapsing onto the ground. My hand, still gripping the tablecloth, yanked it down as I fell, dragging all the dishes and drinks onto the floor. The sound of plates shattering and cups crashing filled the banquet hall. Sitting on the floor, I kicked my legs and began wailing loudly. "I can't go through with this wedding. A mistress has already caused trouble, and now my mother-in-law wants me to endure it. How could I?" Adam hurried over to help me up, but I refused, staying firmly on the ground. In the end, he had no choice but to pick me up and carry me out. The banquet ended in complete disarray. Sarah's reputation was utterly ruined after this. She became the subject of public scorn, her name firmly nailed to the pillar of shame. At the same time, my own reputation as a shrew spread far and wide. But I knew better. In a society like ours, as long as you didn't care about your reputation, being labeled a shrew could bring certain advantages. Adam arranged for a driver to take me back to the bridal house while he stayed behind to clean up the mess. Watching his retreating figure, I couldn't help but smirk coldly. Back at the house, I poured myself a glass of the prepared wedding wine and drank it alone. After the two dramatic scenes at the banquet, I figured no one would dare come by to disrupt our bridal chamber. The warm alcohol burned as it slid down my throat, leaving me feeling exhilarated. I quickly fell into a deep sleep. Half asleep, I vaguely heard Adam return. He was talking with his secretary at the door. The secretary advised, "You shouldn't return to the family estate for a while. The impact is too damaging. It's better to wait until Claire is pregnant and your mother has calmed down before going back." Adam replied. That suited me just fine. I thought to myself as I drifted back to sleep. A sudden chill woke me, and I realized Adam had climbed into bed. He nudged me a few times, but seeing that I was sound asleep, he turned away and leaned against the headboard. He stayed in that position until dawn. Though I wasn't sleeping deeply, I could sense him sitting there alone, quietly crying through the night. What was he thinking? Did he regret marrying me? This was just the beginning. Whatever was to come, there was no avoiding it. To gain something, you always had to pay a price. For now, I still had to deal with trivial matters and petty people. It was an unavoidable phase, one I had to endure to grow stronger. After the wedding, I found time to go to the hospital for a tubal ligation, only to discover I was already pregnant. Without hesitation, I changed the procedure to an abortion. At the time, abortions were performed without anesthesia. A large, spoon-like tool was inserted into the uterus, scraping painfully until it felt as if every organ inside had been displaced. The procedure room was shared by multiple women, and the air was filled with the sounds of their agonized screams. The doctors were indifferent, offering no comfort as they went about their tasks with numb expressions. Shaking, I climbed off the surgical table and drank a bowl of brown sugar water to regain some strength. Deep down, I resolved that if I didn't achieve something significant in this life, I'd never forgive myself. I returned to my parents' home to recover, and took the opportunity to warn my mother about the importance of workplace safety, something she had overlooked in the past. I also arranged for my grandmother to undergo a full medical examination, covering the expenses myself. I suggested my parents bring her to live with them, given that my brother would need her house after his upcoming marriage. They agreed, saying it was better to make the move sooner rather than later. Adam visited me at my parents' home for a meal. He assumed I had returned to handle family matters and didn't question me much. Once back at the bridal house, I threw myself into my studies, preparing day and night for the upcoming college entrance exams. I still had a clear impression of the first exam papers. I had studied them extensively during my past attempts, but I couldn't afford to let my guard down. I had a discussion with Adam Johnson, with 6 months remaining until the college entrance exams. I told him that I wouldn't be working for the time being. He readily agreed, even honoring our pre-wedding agreement by handing over his full salary to me, leaving me in charge of giving him an allowance. The first time he came to borrow pocket money from me, I noticed a slight upward curve at the corners of his mouth, his expression genuinely cheerful. He was happy because this marked the first sign of reconciliation between us. I knew money wasn't an issue for him. Adam's parents both had substantial salaries and often supported him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to save so much to give me in the first place. But this act of handing over his earnings wasn't just about the money. It was a symbolic test of submission, one that established a clear sense of household hierarchy. In this life, I intended to carve out my space and maintain it. In my previous life, my personal space had been completely eroded by others. This time, if kindness couldn't flourish, then it would grow thorns instead. The shrew label was a shield that could protect me from easy attacks. Though it wasn't invincible, I avoided visiting Adam's family. But his mother wasn't about to let me off so easily. She sent someone to summon me, insisting that I return. I decided to face her directly. As soon as I stepped into their house, Adam's mother cast a cold glance my way, then gestured toward a dirty bedsheet placed conspicuously in the middle of the living room. Fanny's been sick these past few days, so I've had to handle the housework myself. This sheet is too heavy for me to clean. You can take care of it. Her tone was reasonable and calm, making it difficult for me to outright refuse. Back then, it was customary for daughters-in-law to visit their in-laws on weekends to clean the house. However, I wasn't intimidated. In my previous life, they had used the same tactics to corner me. Not only would they make me hand-wash bedsheets, but my mother-in-law also insisted that I hang them outside to absorb the fresh scent of sunlight. Every time I struggled to lift the heavy, waterlogged sheets onto the clothesline, I was left exhausted. During the winter, washing these sheets left me drenched in sweat, chilled to the bone, and my hands cracked and raw. This time, I tossed the bedsheet into a tub of water, gave it a symbolic few pats, and then retreated to a corner to read a book. When enough time had passed, I wrung the sheet out and hung it on the line. The spot I chose happened to be where a group of children was playing. As expected, the kids began crawling under and around the sheet, and before long, it fell to the ground. I took the opportunity to gather the children and their parents, complaining loudly, "I already washed this once, and I can't do it again. The sheet's filthy now, and my mother-in-law will be upset. Whoever's child knocked it down needs to clean it for me." This sparked chaos in the courtyard. Several families became involved, with some parents scolding their kids and others hurriedly washing the sheet. The whole area descended into noisy commotion. When Adam's father returned from work, he quickly pieced together what had happened. His face darkened as he glanced at me, then at Adam's mother. I didn't stick around for dinner and quietly slipped back home, my hands unharmed and my energy intact. Later, I heard that Adam's mother bore the brunt of the fallout. Adam's father gave her a thorough reprimand, saying, "You know she's a shrew, so why provoke her? You're just creating trouble for me. Even if she's like a mad dog lying quietly, why poke at her with a stick? This is on you." Adam's mother was so furious she cried nonstop. Adam, who only learned of the incident the next day, came home with a stiff expression. I wasn't about to hold back either. I greeted him with a cold face, slamming objects around as I moved. Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist, pulling me close. "Claire, you used to be the most gentle person. What's happened to you? You've become a completely different person," he said, his tone filled with frustration and confusion. Even though Adam Johnson held me in his arms, I didn't even glance at him. What was this? Was he planning to confront me about something? He let out a sigh. I wouldn't dare. I let out a sarcastic laugh. In my previous life, when I was meek and submissive, he had teamed up with his mother to bully me, so I responded curtly, "Good. You shouldn't. Your family's problems are for your family to handle. Fanny claims she's too sick to work? Then hire another housekeeper. You replaced the old nanny with her during my wedding, and now she's slacking off, leaving me to do the work? What kind of nonsense is that?" Adam looked at me, shocked. "Claire, why are you using such foul language? You're supposed to be preparing for college. So what if I use foul language? When your family behaves this shamelessly, what am I supposed to say? Sweet words." I snapped. "If this doesn't work out, we'll just divorce." He stared at me in disbelief. "Claire, why do you keep talking about divorce? Who would you even find after me?" I replied lightly, "Some people are more trouble to have than to live without." His face turned pale. My reputation as a shrew had already spread, and Adam's mother was caught in a dilemma. Her facade of gentleness and propriety was beginning to crack. She wanted me to return to their home, so she could continue her attempts to manipulate me. But everyone knew I wasn't one to back down. If she tried to make me work, it would only cause more trouble for herself. Yet, not asking me to come back left her feeling uneasy. In the meantime, she resorted to badmouthing me to Adam, claiming they'd married the wrong woman and that I lacked any of the virtues expected of a proper wife. I learned all this from a few women in the compound who were friendly with me and equally outspoken. One of them, Cassie, was particularly close to me. She worked nearby and often came by to chat. When Adam came home, I adopted a cold demeanor and refused to talk to him. My approach was simple: preemptive silent treatment. I wanted him to feel the frustration his family had caused me. Whatever arguments he'd planned to make fell flat under my cold indifference. Occasionally, he even tried to placate me. "Honey, why are you upset? Is it the stress from studying? How about we go to the park this weekend and take a boat ride?" Meanwhile, Adam's mother often lamented at home, practically beating her chest in frustration. But there was little she could do about me. I had no concern for appearances, and though she tried to assert her authority as the elder, I met her as an equal, turning her into my sparring partner. After months of this back and forth, the day of the college entrance exams finally arrived. Thanks to a combination of preparation and favorable circumstances, I was admitted to the best university in the country, located in Beijing. When I received the acceptance letter, I broke down and cried. This was the opportunity one had waited 2 lifetimes for. I was finally leaving this place. Sarah and Mike both got into a local university. Adam had already been accepted to college long ago, and was now in his final year, set to graduate in 1 more year. As everyone prepared to go their separate ways, Adam's mother suggested he divorce me, but he refused. That night, Adam sat alone with a plate of chives and a bottle of liquor, drinking by himself. When I returned home from visiting my family, it was already late. Adam, slightly tipsy and flushed, looked at me and said, "Claire, if I hadn't given your city quota to Sarah back then, would things have turned out differently between us?" I didn't respond. But I already knew the answer in my heart. Someone who would betray me once would always take that step. No matter the circumstances. There was no happy ending for the two of us. We were destined for failure. These past 6 months of living in enemy territory had been anything but easy. I gritted my teeth and kept going, enduring everything thrown my way. As Lu Sun once said, true warriors dare to face the bleakness of life and the bloodiness of reality. That quote had been my constant encouragement, helping me make it this far. 3 years passed in a flash. During those years, I maintained a distant but civil relationship with Adam Johnson. The long-distance separation and infrequent visits led to a natural cooling of our relationship. But that wasn't my fault. Mike, after completing his first year of university, was sent abroad on an exchange program. For the next 2 years, only Sarah and Adam remained in our hometown. Mike once again asked Adam to look after Sarah. Over those 2 years, their interactions became more frequent. After the fiasco at the wedding banquet, I couldn't understand what Mike was thinking. He wasn't the type to be overly sentimental, as far as I knew. But Sarah's lack of discretion surprised me. In my previous life, I had thought their initial interactions were pure and unintentional. However, now it seemed clear that at least Sarah had other intentions. My guess was that she feared Mike wouldn't return and decided to latch onto Adam as her backup plan. Adam later wrote me a letter explaining the situation. He admitted he felt guilty about what happened during the wedding banquet. He claimed Mike had asked for his help, but not to the extent of touching my city quota. That, Adam said, was entirely his fault. He also admitted responsibility for the public embarrassment Mike's family endured at the banquet. Therefore, he felt obligated to continue looking after Sarah and assured me I had nothing to worry about. I didn't reply. That winter break, I returned home for the first time in a long while. As soon as I stepped into the house, I found only Adam and Sarah inside. The two of them were busy in the kitchen and didn't notice my arrival. Without saying a word, I quietly left and headed straight to the Johnson family estate, where I sought out Cassie and a few other women we all knew. These women were well known for their gossip and lack of fear when it came to stirring up trouble. When we entered my house together, the sound of Adam and Sarah laughing and chatting in the kitchen was crystal clear. I looked at my companions with a wry smile. See? I wasn't wrong about them, was I? Their expressions were filled with disdain and scorn. I handed out snacks, peanuts and sunflower seeds, and we all sat down, waiting for the show to begin. When Adam and Sarah finally came out of the kitchen with plates of food, they froze at the sight of the room full of people. The atmosphere, which had been faintly intimate, suddenly became unbearably awkward under the scrutiny of so many witnesses. Adam hurriedly set the dishes on the table, removed his apron, and nervously wiped his hands. Approaching me with a hint of panic, he said, "Why didn't you let me know you were coming back? I could have picked you up at the train station." I gave him a cold, mocking smile. "Oh, I've been hearing rumors about you too, so I thought I'd pay a surprise visit. See if I could catch you red-handed. And wouldn't you know it, you didn't disappoint me." Then I raised my voice, rallying the women. "What are you all waiting for? Let's go." With that, I led the charge, slamming my glass onto the table as a signal. I grabbed Sarah by the hair and shoved her to the ground. "You shameless tramp. Can't keep your hands off other women's men, can you? Is that the only way you know how to live? A good university student. And yet you'd rather play the mistress." The other women jumped in, gleefully joining the fray. Adam finally snapped out of his shock and rushed to pull us apart. In the chaos, someone scratched his face, leaving him looking disheveled and utterly humiliated. We didn't hit Sarah hard, just enough to teach her a lesson. The goal was to shame her, not cause serious harm. By the time it was over, Sarah was a mess, her dignity in tatters. The spectacle ended with everyone dispersing, leaving behind a thoroughly embarrassed Adam and Sarah. I walked away, my head held high, knowing the message had been sent. We left triumphantly, but the news of catching Adam Johnson and Sarah red-handed spread like wildfire. Not satisfied with that, I later went to Sarah's school and caused a scene, ensuring her reputation was further tarnished. Although she eventually graduated, she didn't secure a position at the university. Instead, she was assigned to work in the remote countryside, where she was most needed. The time she had schemed to skip her rural service was now reclaimed. Later, I heard that Sarah had once again lost all of Mike's hard-earned money in the stock market. Furious, Mike returned to the country and caused an uproar. This time, however, I wasn't there to be Adam's scapegoat, nor did Adam step in to clean up Sarah's mess. Desperate and without recourse, Mike went to extreme lengths, nearly ruining Sarah's life entirely. I didn't let Adam off the hook either. I went to his workplace, accusing him of poor morals and improper conduct. Even as his wife, my words planted doubt in his colleagues and supervisors, undermining their trust in him. After several such disruptions, Adam's career began to suffer significant setbacks, and any future promotions became unlikely. His mother once again urged him to divorce me, but Adam refused. Around the same time, Adam's mother fell ill, just as she had in my previous life. However, this time, instead of finding joy in tormenting me, she faced her illness amid the strain of Adam's professional and personal struggles. Her condition worsened rapidly, and she passed away a few years later. One evening, I looked at Adam with a faint smile and asked him, "Why don't you just divorce me? Wouldn't you be free then?" He sighed deeply. "My mother suggested it, and I've seriously considered it. I was even tempted. But one night, I had a dream. I dreamed we had a child, that you didn't get into college and had a miserable life. I dreamed I wasn't a good husband or father, that I was unfaithful and entangled with others. When I woke up, I decided that no matter how you treat me, I'll treat you well for the rest of my life." I was stunned. His words caught me completely off guard, leaving me momentarily speechless. That marked the end of our conversation. When I received news that I had been chosen for a government-sponsored study abroad program, Adam came to see me again. With sincerity in his voice, he said, "I truly wish you the best in this life. I'll wait for you at home, and I won't make any more mistakes." After arriving in America and settling my enrollment, I wrote Adam a letter, the first I had ever written to him voluntarily. The timing was deliberate. I waited until everything regarding my studies was finalized, fearing he might interfere if I wrote too soon. In the letter, I wrote, "After securing the study abroad opportunity, I began guarding myself against you. I knew Sarah had applied for the same program. Since these spots aren't determined by universities, but allocated by the Ministry of Education, I was worried you might try to help her and compete with me again. That's why I staged the scene to ruin both of your reputations in advance. It's called being proactive, preventing trouble before it happens. Of course, if you two were clean and innocent, I wouldn't have had the chance. But Adam, this is who you are. A man I have to constantly guard against. An unreliable husband. We lost all trust in each other long ago. Separation is the best choice for both of us. Dragging this out benefits no one. I'm always on edge, fearing betrayal from you. And I'll never forgive you for the past. Don't delay the divorce. Think it over carefully." When I returned to visit my family, Adam and I finalized the divorce. He sighed deeply and said, "In my last life, I failed you. In this life, I'll let you go." I looked at him coldly. "I hope we never meet again in the next life." Afterward, I returned to America and immersed myself in promoting China's reform and opening up policies among the overseas Chinese community. I encouraged Chinese expatriates to invest back home, leveraging the era's economic opportunities, where trades like exchanging shirts for airplanes were becoming reality. Later, when I returned to China, I used the money I had earned from working and studying abroad, combined with advanced management ideas, to contribute to the country's industrial and economic revitalization. This, I believed, was the best way to make my second chance at life truly meaningful.